Hi, everybody. We've got the beautiful Ashley Holmes with us today. She's an incredible fertility coach, and she's the founder and CEO of Holistic Fertility Coach Incorporated. She helps women who are struggling with infertility to conceive with ease, and she's deeply passionate about creating one-to-one programs that bring mind, body, and spirit back into balance, which is just up our alley. I've got the links to her website and her programs underneath this, guys, in case you are curious, which I know you will be when we're working with someone and talking to someone this juicy. I'm going to let her introduce herself and then we're going to fire off. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you do, how you got into it? Let them know how you can help them.
Thank you. I have goosebumps already, so I know this is going to be an inspired conversation, and I'm happy to be here. And I would just love to share with anyone who is struggling with infertility that, there's support available, and that's truly why I birthed my business, is because I feel like I did it the hard way the first time around, and I found an easier, holistic, natural way that really, changed my life, not only to help with fertility, but me as an individual, as a person, and really just a coming home to myself and being anchored in who I am, and that things don't have to be hard and they don't have to feel hard, and there is support and so many resources and things that we can tap into that perhaps we don't know are available to us.
I think that a huge part of the fertility journey is still this unspoken shame that women have around it.
Yes.
Keeps us very isolated and alone. So I think that message that support is available is huge. You said you had two very different experiences. So do you want to share a little bit about what that was like for you?
Sure. Over a decade ago, I went the traditional route. I was in denial at first. I'd been trying for over a year and I was like, I'm young, this is just going to happen. And finally went to the fertility clinic and eventually did conceive twins. And I was very grateful. I am very grateful that I have twins. I have boy girl twins. I got the dream, so to speak. But I walked away from that not having any answers for unexplained infertility and not thinking that I could conceive naturally. And also not wanting to go through that process or put myself through that again, because that did not feel good in my mind or body or spirit. It was extremely stressful and there was so much pressure that I was putting on myself, and I didn't have the tools or resources to be able to help myself to be in a better place. And it wasn't so much the physical aspects that really took a toll. It was more the emotional pieces and the mental pieces that once you left the clinic, there was nothing else to support you or help you or deal with any of these things, especially when you're putting things into your body that are unfamiliar to you, that you haven't experienced before, and trying to navigate that. Versus on the flip side, I'll just go both roads. So I landed on my yoga mat, and that became a practice, and I started to do trainings, and it wasn't until I started to do the quieter, gentler aspects like yin yoga and restorative yoga and yoga nidra, and calm my nervous system and worked with my nervous system and moved out of fight or flight mode, which I had been living in unknowingly for decades, and to actually have and bring peace to my past and just really surrendered is the best way to describe it, to all that had been before, and realizing that holding on to the past was really blocking me from the things I wanted in the future. And that allowed me to conceive naturally, to learn to nourish myself optimally, and to take care of my mind, body, and spirit, and prioritize myself, and to use all of those things still daily.
I think there's quite a few incredible things that you brought up there. I think it's a big shock to the system that when we're dealing with new substances and often medical protocols around fertility, we are left to our own devices. It's like you're either in the clinic and you have the doctors around you, but then you're alone. And very often even the partner isn't participating in full, which I think blindsides a lot of women, and it also contributes to the shame, right? So it keeps it very hushed. And then we shift into regulating the nervous system, which is switching the nervous system from fight, flight, freeze into repair, restore, renew, is at the root of all healing, right? You can't even absorb your food properly if you cannot shift your nervous system. And cortisol levels being high is one of the major causes of, unexplained infertility, as is, birth control pills at the wrong time in life, and your pituitary gland not learning how to talk properly to your ovaries, all of which is a nervous system issue, right? But then when we shift into that's a daily practice, I think that's where most people don't get it, particularly because they're sold this idea of like impermanent diets or drink this tea for 2 or 3 weeks. And this idea of your health is a permanent lifelong devotion, right? It's a practice that you're supposed to live.
I love that.
I think most people are stuck on it. It's a diet that I do to fix myself. And it's like, your body was never broken, but the way you treated it was. Right. And you can't, I struggle with it so much, particularly with when I run the weight loss courses, because this idea that you can abuse the body is so strong, even in spiritual circles. I once had a spiritual teacher tell me that you could eat as much chocolate cake as you wanted. And I was like, well, you can, but when you understand that each teaspoon of sugar strips 40 ounces of magnesium, when you understand that it might taste good for a moment, but that it will have long-term effects on not just your quality of life and your mental health, but longevity, you don't want that anymore, right?
No.
But this idea that, you should just be able to do whatever you want to your body and it doesn't matter. It doesn't resonate with me at all. I believe that we're supposed to love our bodies, period, point blank,
Yes. I think honestly, one of the things that shifted me and how I treated my body was walking by a quote on the wall, and it said something to the effect of, treat your body like a sacred temple in mind and body and spirit. And like, it has become a sacred vessel. And that's how you can bring life into you and be able to receive, is when you treat yourself with the utmost care and love and compassion, and truly know that every thought you think, all the things you nourish yourself with, the environments you surround yourself with, they all play a role in how you are feeling. It's not just one thing. And that's why it's a holistic program. It's all of the things, and looking at them and seeing, where can I make shifts and changes so that I feel aligned and I feel balanced and I feel how I'm meant to feel. And that is possible for all of us, but it does take a bit of work. It says, yes, I want this for myself. I matter. I am worthy, and this is important to me, not only now, but for the future.
There's so many studies that show that even how children take care of their health is based on the mum taking care of her health. So and the restoration part is such an important bit before pregnancy, during pregnancy, after pregnancy. That particularly because you add sleep deprivation and the exhaustion that comes with a newborn, the idea that women can work out like men, and with workout programs that have been created for men by men, when their bodies are going through such different things, can be very damaging.
Absolutely. And I'll just share that, with my twins, I had an emergency C-section. That was a stressful pregnancy. It was deemed high risk for many reasons. And the whole entire time was stressful. And it was like, oh, I'll just be able to relax once they're here. That didn't happen either, because then you're doubly sleep deprived. You're a new mom. You're trying to feed, bathe, diaper 2 babies at a time, and saying, oh, well, maybe I'll sleep next time they're both asleep. Maybe I'll sleep next time, and living in a whole new world that you haven't experienced before. Versus when I conceived naturally and my water broke, I was hiking because I wanted that baby to come out naturally. I was home within 24 hours, and I was back at Baby and Me yoga 10 days later. Completely different experience, and a totally empowered experience of what our body is truly capable of when we listen to it and tune into it and know that we can have that experience. It doesn't have to be what is out there in the medical world, and to advocate for yourself in the clinics, at the hospital, wherever you are, whatever you choose, do what is right for you and know what is right for you.
I think that the birth plans, I made two. I made a birth plan for natural birth, and I made a birth plan for C-section because I had no idea how it was going to go. And we were in the middle of the COVID crisis when I was having my little one. But that there, it's so huge because you can prove that you told them what you wanted, and it's clear and it's in black and white, and you don't have to find words when you're in the middle of surges, or when you're, often like exhausted. You don't have to explain to somebody why or what, it's already there. I think that the planning takes a lot of the pressure off, because they put so much pressure on you to advocate for yourself in a moment where you are so vulnerable.
Yes, that is so true. And to know that and have your partner know that this is what you want. Like, I was adamant that I didn't want to have another C-section, because I was going to be at home with 3 children now and having to look after and care for 3 children, not just having the luxury really of just having to mind 2, but to have other ones that needed to go to school and be organized and all of these other things. I wanted to be functioning as best as possible.
Yeah, both ways are strange, isn't it? I find it shocking how much, regardless of what a woman's choice, it's questioned. I've seen it go
Yes.
both ways. I've had women who know they have serious injuries and that they need a C-section be told the whole way, you're damaging your baby, you should have a natural birth. And I've had women who are told the other, they want a natural birth more than anything, and they're forced into having C-sections, when there is actually no medical reason for it. It's just, it would be more convenient for us if. And I'm so pro-choice. I'm sitting there going, this is somebody else's body. There are risks involved that you do not have to live with. And I think it's mad that we do have to advocate for ourselves in that way. But I think that it's every step of the way. I mean, are you in Britain or you're in America?
I'm in Canada.
You're in Canada. So here in Britain, you have to go through 3 miscarriages before you're allowed to ask to see a consultant or a doctor to help with your infertility.
Wow.
I know. And it's like in legislature, it is that sexist.
Wow, that's awful.
Yeah. So it's like, it's still very backwards in a lot. Like these things are, and the things that I've heard them say, because often I get called in when women are giving birth, or when they're, because some of them are alone and some of them have been working with me the whole way through. And it's very hard, like, because they've worked so hard on their boundaries and on clearing their stuff. When they say, I know you need to ask me before you touch me, and somebody just jams a hand in, and you're sitting there going, it's like, this is a person, and it's that communication all the way through. But I really think that, like, the advocating is so huge. The understanding what the risks are so huge, because the emotional blackmail, especially when they turn around to you and go, oh, the baby's going to die, the baby might stop breathing. If you don't do what we want, the baby could die. And they don't say, well, if you do what we want, the baby could die. Right? If you go down this path, what's the actual comparison? What are the actual risks? And you've had none of it explained before you go in there. And suddenly you're being asked to make choices that you don't understand because no one's educated you. And that is just wrong. It's just blindsiding women when they need to be at the most empowered moment of their lives.
Yes, I feel there's a lot of, this is the way it should be, but is it? Like, really ask yourself, is it? And I know with the fertility clinic, they were like, after 3 months, they're like, well, this should have worked by now, we're moving on to the next protocol. And I was like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around what I'm currently experiencing. And already it's like, no, shelf that. Your body isn't doing what we want it to do. So, and, I left feeling very deflated and very low, because it was like, but I'm doing everything you're telling me down to a science,
But like, for me, it's like I said, prevention. I work so hard on prevention because I'm focused on the nutrition and on the psychosomatic sides of illness, right? That it boggles my mind that you can even prescribe a fertility treatment to a woman before you have checked her nutrition levels, her hormone levels, and that they will only check the estrogen and the progesterone instead of the LSH and everything else, because there aren't 2 hormones. There are 7 to 9 hormones for fertility that could be off. And it just gives such an incomplete picture that leaves us feeling so inadequate, right?
Yes,
And you're sitting there going, this is not the whole, it's 100% not the whole thing.
it is not. Absolutely. It's a piece and part of it, but all areas should be looked at, all areas should be addressed. And then you have a full, complete puzzle, by just dealing with the physical or just dealing with one piece and part of it, or just dealing with nutrition, it's not enough because you're missing other pieces and parts of you as a being, and really to honor that you deserve and should have so much more. I respect anybody that comes to me, whether they're using a clinic or doing IVF, but it's like, you need so much support, in my opinion, to go alongside of that, because what you are putting your mind, body, and spirit through that process
It's
is
huge.
very, very challenging. And you have such high expectations, and to try to not be stressed is very difficult. You end up being even more stressed.
Oh, the idea that you shouldn't go be stressed when you were going through stressful situations is like deeply stressful. And a way of emotionally bypassing the entire experience, right? And of putting it down, because if you value someone's journey, if you understand the struggle they are in, then they have a sense of accomplishment when they achieve their goal. And they even have a sense of accomplishment if they don't, because they know that they tried everything they could, right?
Yes, that
You're
is
not
that is
present with their
absolutely it.
journey. Oh, if you're not present with their journey, if you invalidate it, then they feel like it's worthless, or they're failing, or they go to shame, and it's just unnecessary.
Absolutely. It's so important to empower them and for them to know, I'm feeling this, and this is what is available to me for me to use so that I can help myself, and for them to be able to tune in and know that. And they don't know it at first, but I begin and guide them through that. They're working through all of these emotions because we're often not taught to be able to handle the anger that arises, the sadness that arises, the shame and the guilt, and all of these energetically heavy emotions that are landing in our bodies. And we're not giving them permission to be expressed or to be felt or to be seen or to be heard, but they're there.
Oh, they're very much there, and they stop, like you said, they stop us from getting the support that we need, not just from professionals, but from friends, from family members, and it's very much shut down. I remember after I had one of my miscarriages, trying to discuss it with a very close family member, and her response was, "I've never been through that. I've got a friend that has. Why don't you talk to her?" Right? So there's still very much this, because I think women are so afraid of any kind of loss of a child, right? There's so much fear of it that having empathy around it takes a certain kind of, I think it takes a certain kind of broken heart, like that
Right.
willingness to go there with any kind of loss, whether it's a miscarriage or the loss of like the capacity to conceive. It's such a huge deal for women, not just like when we talk about modern times. If you like, because most people don't know this, but historically, biblically, fertility was the number one reason for divorce, or for the being sent home in shame, right? The marriage wouldn't stand unless you could conceive a child. So for women, there was a lot more on the stake than just are you fertile or not, or even like having a boy. It was this energy of, I will lose everything. And that's still there in the collective consciousness, right? It being it comes up, whether it's I remember thinking how strange it was as well, how attached you could be to a being you hadn't ever met, even if like for 4 weeks or through, how deeply attached, and part of you going, this is insane, how is that possible? But that is the experience of being a mother, right? You're already all in. It's like there's no holding it back. So
No, it absolutely is. Just there's a connection, there's a bond, and you call that little soul in, and that little soul enters at the exact right moment that it's meant to. And it's really hard when that doesn't last, and that baby doesn't come earthside, and you don't get to have that vision and dream that you have like felt in your mind, body, and spirit for so long. That's devastating. And so many people are struggling, and so many people are struggling silently, and they don't have the support that they need. And when your partner is going through that with you, they cannot be the support that you need. As much as you want them to be your everything and anything, they're in it with you. And I think often, I did it the first time around with my husband, I wanted him to just, make this better. And I had very unrealistic expectations of how he was actually going to be able to help me through this. It wasn't his role to be able to help me through that. It was his role to be my loving husband and to just love me for what I was going through. But beyond that, that was not his job, even though I felt like it was.
I think we're sold an idea that our partners are our therapists, and our best friends. And it's exactly what you said. Like for us, we're worried about conceiving. For them, they're worried, like I said, about losing us, about losing the baby, about, the financial pressure. And it is huge. It is an identity shift for them too, in a massive way. And I think just like us, they don't get any support. There's even, if anything, there's even
No.
less.
Yes.
And they're even more sensitive than we are. So you can see it's the perfect storm, isn't it? It's just the perfect storm. But I think it's I think it's very important to have that outside objective support, especially because sometimes the path that you want to go down may not want to be the path that they want to go down. I remember with my son, my husband was very set on me having a natural birth. And I remember saying to him, I love you, but I'm the one that's going to have to do this. So this is not your decision, right? I hear where you're coming from, and I love that you care so much. And I've not just read, but studied all the sides. But I don't think we can always control everything. Right, we're just going to have to take it one step at a time, and we're going to be prepared, period, end of story. Like there is no scenario in which I'm not going to be prepared. But I think you can find yourself at odds very easily, with a partner that either wants to keep trying when you don't because you've had enough, or a partner that wants a different style of birth than you do, or has a different expectation of the birthing room or the procedure or the C-section. And even different expectations after the baby's born, right? What are you expecting after the baby comes from them versus what they're thinking they're going to have to contribute? It's a huge unhad conversation.
Yes, it really is. I totally agree that there is so much. There's so many dynamics in all of it. There's so much. There's so many layers, and we are multi-layered. And it's, having those difficult and those hard conversations, even though you don't probably want to, because it's going to help you grow and bring you closer together versus, pull you apart, because you don't want that either. But the stress definitely can take a toll on relationships, and, the financial aspect of it, of, how many times could we do this? If you're doing IVF, how many, what is actually really realistic? And then once you get on that road, it's like, how many times could I do this? How many times could I put myself, my body, the leaving work and the appointments and all of the things, when your fridge looks like a pharmacy,
And the
then
potential miscarriages, that you are putting your heart on the line. You are, and there's only so many you can go through before, like I said, your mental health is affected, particularly like I said, when you have children as well already. Right. That was one of the biggest things, as I said, because I'm on another fertility journey now because I'm trying for my second. And when you have the first, it's like you said, you it's unconscious, but you do have the luxury of knowing that your full attention is going on that child. With the second, you're like, how much am I willing to put my physical or mental health at risk when he is completely dependent on that?
right.
It's another conversation just with the therapist, never mind with and it can very much put the body into freeze,
Yes.
so it's even if you have a very supportive partner, even if everything else is going well, just the topics, talking about them is a huge release. It does recalibrate the nervous system. It does make you feel less alone. And I think it does make us feel the the steel level of courage that women have, you know, to kind of put their hearts and their souls and their bodies on the line to create a life. That's a pretty incredible thing.
It really is. I mean, I remember just being amazed when I came home from the hospital the first time and had two babies in like one in each arm. And I was just like, how on earth, when they were not in my body anymore, how on earth? Like I was just in awe of what my body was able to do, because when I was actually holding them, I was like, how on earth were you in there together? Like the both of you. It's just incredible.
Yeah, they're the most incredible things when they come out, and their energy as well. Like I remember I think I always knew at an unconscious level that I was going to have a boy, and my husband in the beginning was like, no, it's going to be a girl. And I just had this strong gut feeling, and I was like, it doesn't matter as long as it's healthy, I'm happy, right? But I had this feeling, and my taste in clothing changed. He was it was a very easy pregnancy. I didn't figure out he was in there till 16 weeks when I had a urine infection, because there was no morning sickness, there was no nothing. I was just getting on with life until I had this urine infection. And the doctor was like, yeah, it's not just a urine infection, there's a baby in there. And I was like, okay. But it was literally at the stage where, because it was 16 weeks, they could already tell me, because they were like straight into emergency ultrasound, because obviously you're supposed to have had checkups before, and they wanted to see what was going on. And it just changed my personality so much before I even knew he was in there. You know, it changed what I ate. I remember like having days where all I wanted to eat was pineapple, right? Which makes sense, right? The bromelain, the anti-inflammatory for the gut, the lowering of the nausea that I didn't even know I had. But all I wanted was pineapple and spinach at one stage. And I remember my husband looking at me going, okay. And I've got weird eating habits anyway. You know, I'm very healthy, but there was things that came out that are so his, you know, that there's no other way, that now that he's out, they're his favorite foods or his favorite things. So
Oh,
it
that's so
very much
funny.
changes you.
I very much craved mangoes when I was pregnant with my twins, and like for the life of me, like they love mangoes, and the next little one, it was like I was in the middle of meditation training and yoga trainings, and he came out like this Zen little Buddha baby, and
My husband
the
used to
mango
call her
cravings
Buddha,
were
Buddha.
long gone, and he doesn't even like them. I was, I had changed, and, my whole physiology had changed. And I think oftentimes that is one of the letdowns of the medical world, is sometimes if we do have a diagnosis, then we are attached to that diagnosis, and then we don't think that things are possible for us or will be easy for us or going to take a lot of hard work, because we have a preconceived notion of what that means.
I think the diagnosis, when identifying with an illness, is a very dangerous thing, particularly
Yes.
when the illness is an umbrella term like unexplained infertility. And, you know, just talking about birth control pills, they don't tell women that it takes 4 years during adolescence for your pituitary gland to learn to talk to your ovaries. And that if you interfere with that process with birth control pills or with other methods, that your body will have to learn it when you come off of them. Right? It doesn't just happen in the background. They're real hormonal disruptors. That is what they are. That is what they do. And then this idea that it's so clear in the research, that you can come off them and instantly be fertile again. There's very little research to back that up. There's a lot of research that backs up it takes time for your endocrine system to regulate. It takes time for your body to find its rhythm and its cycles. Your whole hormonal chemistry will change. Very often, even your desire levels will change, because if your body believes you're already pregnant, that's a very different biochemical frequency than you wanting to find the correct partner, I remember, particularly for me, because I came off birth control years and years before my son was born, when I was trying to heal my thyroid. And I remember how my sense of smell changed. I remember how what I would accept and not accept from my partner completely changed. I remember many of my standards shifted, because I think it's such a huge part of how a female chooses her mate, right? And when it's locked off, when it's switched off biochemically, it has a huge effect on our emotional and our physical well-being. But I also think it affects the men, because I think they can smell the pheromones. And I think they behave differently. They're less protective. They're less possessive. They're less when the smells that a woman is already pregnant, because they are hardwired to respect that in their body in a different way, right? To treat that body in a different way. You can't take us out of thousands of years of biology just because they're playing with it for the last 100 years. So it's a very interesting idea that you can just click a button and it's unexplained infertility if it's not for years. Like, well, maybe if you hadn't messed with the natural process for 15, 20, 30 years, we could have that conversation, right? But if you've been messing with it for a long time, it's not unusual for 6 months to 2 years after that before the baby comes.
I think so many of us, went and used birth control pills at a young age and didn't have any idea of the repercussions or what this could mean or how this would affect us. None of that information is out there. And at that point in time, that is not your first concern or priority of what this could mean in the future. At that time, you're thinking, I don't want to conceive. I don't want to be pregnant at this stage in my life. And that's why you're doing it, but not realizing that sometimes this can be harming you later on. And for myself, I went for a short time back onto birth control after I had my twins, because I was like, I cannot have another one. Like right now, my hands are full.
Yep.
And then I reached the point of, why am I doing this? This is crazy. And I don't want to put chemicals into my body ever again. And I don't want to do this. And I was like, those are never going to be in my home, in my body ever again. And I'm going to listen to my body and get back in rhythm with my body and actually feel how I'm meant to feel, because all of those things are taking us away from who we truly are when we're adding things into our system. And things are, you're on this cycle. And yeah, I knew when everything was going to be, but I would rather live. We are cyclical beings, and I'd rather live in harmony with my body, with nature, with the seasons, because as well, that's Ayurveda and that's the science of life. And that's truly living in harmony with how we are meant to live.
I remember it really shifting for me, especially when you start to study it and you realize there's only really 1 week of the month that you have to watch. And now the technology is so good that you can literally, especially like with things like mirror fertility, that you can literally pee on a stick and have your exact hormonal makeup. So there's no guesswork. You're not even off by 2 or 3 days, which, like you said, if you have 5 or 6, I know some friends that have 5 or 6 children. So like I said, they really are like, my body physically cannot take any more without there being a high cost, but it's like what you said, it's back to this idea that we're supposed to be at the disposal, particularly sexually, of the partners in our lives. And it's role reversal, because traditionally men chase women for intimacy and for children, and women are doing exactly what we're doing. We're like, well, we can only do it this specific days and work with the harmonies and cycles, because the sexual act creates children, right? So we have to be in harmony, we have to be in balance, and we are the gatekeepers of children coming through to make sure they're taken care of. Whereas the cycle, like with birth control, shifts it to the opposite: men not wanting children, right? And women like kind of in that energy of begging for kids a lot of the time, which biochemically doesn't make any sense unless you think that biochemically we're giving off the vibes that we're already pregnant. So of course they're saying you can't have any more. If you're already biologically pregnant, it makes sense that they think you can't have any more. But it's very I hate to say it, but because I work so much with psychosomatic belief systems, 2 of the things you brought up are so deep. The first is that we are told as women not to get pregnant, right? We are told it is the worst thing you could do. It will destroy your career. It will destroy your life. Do not get pregnant. right? And then that is such a deep message to the unconscious mind. Then you layer on birth controls, condom, all of that stuff is, especially when you do hypnosis, is a direct command to the unconscious mind to not get pregnant, right?
Yes.
So it's a complete switch in gears. I don't know how many times women sit on the bathroom praying not to be pregnant, right? So it's a complete switch in gears from that to conceive, impregnate, carry the baby perfectly through the full gestation, right? And birth a healthy baby. Those are completely different commands to give to the body and to the endocrine system, which require a completely different hormonal and biochemical makeup, right? But then you add the fact that throughout like if you look ancestrally in our DNA, women have, and still are in many areas of the world, married without their consent, forced to have children against their will. And then you have that genetic trauma coming through, just like you would from the Holocaust, that's never been voiced or addressed, that they feel trapped or they feel overwhelmed or they feel like it's against their will when it's not theirs. It's the outcry of their ancestors for so many years of systemized rape or systemized abuse. So there's so many levels that it needs sometimes to be worked through so that you can feel free to choose your experience, emotionally as well as physically.
Definitely. There's a lot sitting in our subconscious mind that we're not aware of. And that's why I love to do meditations and to offer meditations, because, it's a shining a light of awareness into what is actually there, and to bring that to light and to bring what wants to and will be worked through in the moment to the surface, and to know that we can do that and that is possible, and we can begin to rewire and reframe our thoughts that aren't serving us, because so many things that we think day in and day out, starting with just the word infertile in general, is not what we want to be referring to ourselves as. We want to be referring to ourselves as fertile, not focusing on the negative. Just that in and of itself is huge. The words we use, the language we use, all of these things that are being, passing through our eyes and off magazines and TV and social feeds and all the rest of it, often, it really needs to be filtered, and we really need to realize what we're taking in and really choose, what thoughts serve us and what is on repeat, what is looping in your mind day in and day out, and to become aware of it and to begin to reframe that and to notice so that you can.
Oh, it's so powerful, and it's so true that I think one of the biggest things that helped me conceive my son was not just a social media detox, but a lot of the series that I was watching at the time, and it wasn't conscious. It's just things like you said, Bridgerton, or, they would have very strong scenes of, people dying in labor or being traumatized during labor or having difficult labors. And that stuff goes in. You're not thinking about it. It's indirect programming. But that stuff very much goes in, and you become afraid, whether it's Game of Thrones or House of Dragons, or consistently across all media, birth is pathologized, and it's trauma. It's literally you only see traumatic births, and we are isolated so much that we don't normally see other people giving birth, which is completely outside of the natural. We used to see our mothers giving birth, our sisters giving birth, our friends giving birth. We used to be there to hold space for them, right, during those procedures. And with the hospitalization, a lot of that has been completely taken out. So for many of us, the first time we're seeing a birth is our own, right? And that can be very, like I said, scary in and of itself, because you haven't seen it done in a particular way. I remember the first time I saw, because I had a few friends go through it before me, and I have a friend called actually I'm going to leave her name out of it just to protect her privacy, but she was really young. She got married when she was around 19, and she's now got 5 or 6 children. But she she's literally goes, when she knows she's going to labor, she goes for a walk or she goes to the shower, she has a bath, and she gives birth without bleeding. That is how natural and normal the process is, for her. It's like a squatting process, and the baby's coming out, and there's like, all the, like you said, the trauma around it is not what she carries at all. It is like she's at peace. It's a normal thing. Her kids are running in and out the room, you know, and it's just the norm. And then you have, like I said, different types, but having been exposed to it makes you feel more normal if your birth is different, makes you more comfortable having the conversations, makes you more capable of navigating the different situations, right? Whereas when there's this complete silence and isolation, I think that's very toxic. The idea that you just can watch a video in a birthing room and that's going to be enough to prepare you for an experience is like saying, hey, watch a video of a marathon and then run one. You know?
Yeah, no, there's not enough awareness of what it is actually like, or what it can be like, or what is available to you. And I think I nearly like kicked a nurse one time because she was just up in my face. And I was like, I just need some space.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't need you right in my face right now. I'm trying to focus on my breathing, and I felt hassling me at this point in time. And I was just like, give me 5 minutes and come back. I am fine and the baby is fine. I just would like to breathe.
Yeah.
And I think I was trying to be on an exercise ball, and they kept trying to put me back into bed, or I was in the shower and they kept trying to put me back in the bed. And I was like, I don't want to be in the bed. I know that is not the best position to deliver a baby.
Yeah. But I think that was one of the biggest things, because I think so many of women, because we have the good girl trauma, we do give up. When I was in the hospital, they actually called me the mother because I was so fierce. And it's funny, it wasn't a part of me that I tried to cultivate before I went in there. It was just exactly what said, this part of me that knew I had to be whole to be able to take care of my son, and that understood things that they were like trying to pretend didn't exist. Like that there are 3 golden hours after the baby's born. And that's really important for breastfeeding and bonding and attachment. That there are, like you said, there are positions that cause tearing versus don't. There are, there was, whether the baby comes to you straight after, or whether it's, taken off to be weighed and injected, and all kinds of things, that they thought I was very controlling over. And I thought that, they had no business having a say in what happened in my birthing process, and that they had to follow the birthing plan. And I very much got labeled. And I think if I wasn't so stubborn, it's so easy because they just do it anyway. I remember telling them I didn't want antibiotics and watching them inject the antibiotics in. And I was like, I told you I didn't want them, but they just follow through their process. Like you're being processed on a machine, and you're like, I'm not a machine, I'm a person. And I have a voice, but I think it's so wrong. I remember the face they gave me when I gave them the birth plans as well was very funny. And until I told them they were going to sign the birth plans, because I wanted proof that they'd seen them and that we were following them. Because you don't have time when you're focusing on creating a human being to be dealing with other people's attitudes. Right? It's their job to be supporting you. You're taking care of a life death situation over here. You can't imagine them ever turning around to a surgeon and going, this is how we think you should do it. It's the same thing with a mom who's birthing a baby. It's like she's the one doing it, so help, support, but don't tell them how. Unless it's getting really dangerous. I think it's very hard for women. I think it is. And I think even the idea that we should be able to advocate for ourselves it's like, you wouldn't expect a patient to be able to advocate for themselves when they're in the middle of a surgery. Why would you expect a woman to be able to advocate for herself when she's in the middle of giving birth? It's like, this is stuff that should be discussed beforehand and honored during,
Yes.
Not stuff that should be pressed on you. Like I said, the not wanting to be on the birth ball. I remember my sister the same. Her first birth ended up being a C-section, even though she wanted a natural at-home birth. But her second birth, I remember her calling me from the hospital and saying it's not moving fast enough. They want to induce. And me saying to her, get out of the bed, lift some weights, do some squats, start moving the body like natural weights, because it will help the hormones start moving. You're probably just stressed that you're in a new environment and everything's shut down and you're feeling the baby isn't safe, right? And they didn't want her to get out of the bed. And you're sitting there going, this is 2023,
Yes.
this is not Victorian England. You know, we can get out of the bed. There's birth balls in the corridor. Why are we doing? But it depends who you get as well. I think it depends the midwives and stuff. But that's another thing I think is so toxic, is you not having the same doctor or the same midwife, or at least the same team of people with you the whole way through. I think that's a major break in trust. You know, trust is not built overnight, and it can't be demanded. And this idea that you should just be comfortable with a stranger in your birthing room is completely anti-women and anti-birth. I think, you know, it goes against everything family says, that, you know, this is the most vulnerable tiny creature. You want to keep them safe. You don't want a stranger touching them or being anywhere near them. You want people, you want, it's survival. So I think it's very tough, particularly in the UK. It's very much you don't see the same person twice. So I think that's a very toxic way of doing it.
Yeah, I think there is definitely room for improvement wherever you are in the world, because I think a lot of what is truly supportive and valuable isn't what's out there being offered. And, no one wants to feel like a number. No one wants to feel like they don't matter. And no one wants to feel like they're not being heard in what is important to them and what they value and what they want this to look like.
So talk a little bit to me about exactly what the women who are working with you in your programs get, and the different programs that you offer, and how you can help, because women and people in general, they like certainty, especially with the fertility journey. There's so much is up in the air. So exactly what kind of support do you offer? How do you help them along the way? What is the difference between your group programs versus one-to-one or a combination?
So I am solely one-to-one, and I will forever be one-to-one, and I don't do group coaching because I feel like it is vital to honor women where they are at and to meet them where they are at and to move from there. And so that can look like whether they have a diagnosis when they come to me or not, but it is finding breathing techniques that work for them, using Ayurveda to determine their inborn constitution so that they are nourishing themselves optimally. And when you know that, you have that information for the rest of your life. And it's information I feel like everybody should have. But for now, I just work with women who are trying to conceive and doing yin yoga. So many women go to acupuncture, and you can use yin yoga in the same way as going to acupuncture because it clears and moves energy through your meridian lines in the same way. So if you're someone who doesn't like needles, or you're already doing enough needles, this is something you can do from the comfort of your own home. Restorative yoga and yoga nidra, which is a yogic sleep. It's a meditation, which is so soothing, calming, and healing for the nervous system because it's really working all the layers of your being, and you cannot do it wrong. So for anybody who says, I can't meditate, 20 minutes. And when you have a newborn, 20 minutes of yoga nidra is equivalent to 4 hours of sleep. So that in itself is just a life-changing tool that you can have to reset and refresh in those moments when you feel so tired and drained and depleted. And I truly just customize everything for that person, for what they're experiencing in the moment. Like one of my clients was really angry sort of around Easter. And so, I made meditations, our organs house our emotions. So working with the organs that hold anger and really just allowing that to be felt, to be moved through, and to have tools to move forward with. So you're not holding on to your anger, right? So that you're not energetically storing that in your body. And really knowing that you learn how to nourish yourself optimally, that you can continue. It's a 4-month program. You can continue monthly until you conceive. It's totally up to you. But that you have all this information available to you of what truly works for you and what you may not have been tuning into or tapping into. I offer Reiki when they have their period or they haven't conceived, and I offer Reiki sessions to them to just heal, to clear, so they can simply just be. And some of my clients have been like, why don't you offer this more? I'm like, if you want this more, then I can incorporate that more. If they find, and some of them do, that it's really beneficial, it's really helpful them. And if we move through each week of your cycle, you can see the different energy sort of, and I can tune into and feel the energy that is there and what is present. And it's really powerful. And no matter what the outcome, they are completely empowered and they have a new lease on life.
It sounds absolutely incredible. And I agree with you that most people require one-to-one support. I do say that to them. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been so successful, is that I do a lot of group programs, but I always do my own therapy at the same time. And that is a privilege, right? It's a privilege to be able to afford that kind of support. And I'm very aware of that. But I think it came from years of studying hypnosis and counseling, and where you always had supervision and you were always expected to do your own therapy at the same time. Right. So it was kind of ingrained in me from university level that you cannot support others from the empty cup. So it has to be this process, which is not easy once you add kids into the mix, especially if it's not the first time with your fertility journey. But that conversation around periods, I remember I had one client who was telling herself that she had a miscarriage every time she had her period. And I was like, that's not a good message to be sending to the body. If once you have a positive pregnancy test, then we can have the conversation around a miscarriage. But it's too traumatic a thing to associate the loss of a child with every round. But it can come up. It can come up because it can trigger PTSD from previous miscarriages and things like that. And the Reiki helps so much with shifting it and with evolving it. And it's such a beautiful thing that you're doing. So I'm really honored and delighted to be having this conversation with you, and to be introducing you to my people over here, because I think they're absolutely going to love your work. Your sessions are only in public, or they're online as well?
Everything I do is virtually, so I can work with everybody wherever they are in the world. And time zones can be a little bit tricky, but we just, we do the best with what we have. And I'm pretty flexible, and I truly just, I love my clients and I want the best for them, and I want them to have their dream and to achieve their goal, because I know how much it means to them. I've been in their shoes.
Yeah, I think no matter how many times, it's still like such a vulnerable journey. Even just deciding to try again. I can't remember who I was talking to. It might have been you, but I remember one of my clients saying that they were trying. It wasn't you. It was another Reiki therapist that I work with. And she was saying that she and her husband were trying, but they both decided to say that they weren't trying. They were just waiting to see if and when it would happen, but they were adamant that they were not trying, because the pressure was so much, right, from that word, that they were trying to bypass it. So I think you're completely deeply correct, and I can feel how much love you have for these women, and how how transformative the work that you do with them is, and how many babies are in the world because of you. So I'm really, really grateful that you showed up.
Oh, well, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation, Skylar.
It's been lovely. And we will guys, don't forget, all her information is underneath. And yeah, if you have any more questions, pop them underneath and I'll forward them to her as well. Thank you so much, Ashley. It's been an absolutely incredible interview.
Thank you.